87.9 FM. I'm here this morning to wake you all up, to instill some absolute positive energy in you. This is what we have to do this morning because most of you have done your sari at early hours in the morning and you've fallen asleep and you're just struggling to get out of bed this morning. Of course, some of you will be doing the school run today, and we have a lovely sunny day out there today. And we're looking forward to spending a good day with you today, inshallah. And of course, if you want to connect with us on Radio Ramadan on 87.9 FM, you can also call us on 0116 482 2086. Or you can even text us a message or send us a WhatsApp. You can send us a good morning, or you can say salams to us. That would be appreciated on 077 488 55055. So first of all, I will say a big Jazakallah khair to the family who sent us a very good iftar yesterday. I wouldn't like to go through the list because it was extensive and it was absolutely wonderful. Wonderful gesture, and everybody here enjoyed that. So we're here every day. And it's a good gesture for somebody to show some care for us. It was well appreciated. Thank you very much for that. It was absolutely wonderful. So this week, we're focusing every day on our community and how we can all contribute to do some serious community development. Of course, we can only do that when we have a lot of wellness in ourselves. You know, wellness. Without a healthy body to carry you through this wonderful life, it's going to be difficult to surround yourself with the things that you need in your life, right? And health and wellness is very, very important. And we have some good programs ahead to do with health and wellness, and also good eating and cooking and recipes. And it's kind of programs that were much in demand. So everybody is sending us messages. And you should continue to do so because it will help us at the radio to devise the kind of programs that are going to be energizing all of you, right? So this is, we all have to work together as a team. And if you have any good ideas and you think that a certain program would be benefit to the community, then share with us, and we have to then pick up that phone and start looking for the right people to engage with and to deliver the best programs. Of course, in 30 days, it is very difficult to pack a lot of topics, a lot of different presenters, people from different walks of life, different skill sets in the community, in the wider community, in the whole wide world, to engage with all the people who have some excellent ideas and some good nasihas, thoughts that we can all benefit from. So that is what the Ramadan is all about. It's all about giving, and it's all about also receiving some good benefits. So I want you all to get involved, become part of the solution, and otherwise you'll be sat on the side and you'll be part of the problem because you have a lot to say, but you don't get involved. So this is why I've been talking to all the families in the community that let's all work together and bring our ideas on the table and deliver them collectively, regardless of race, color, creed, tradition, culture, and all of that separates and divides us as human beings. And let's all work together in the communities. And you can see around your community, simple basic things like sanitation, cleanliness, and good housekeeping. We need to all work together on that. And if you see some bad happening in the community, link up with everybody else, and you will get a good response, and you'll get things done. So this is the power of people coming together from all different cultures, races, creeds, and in every community we have issues like that. So today, as I mentioned to you earlier on, we are going to be focusing, throughout this week we've been talking about our community and some of the issues that we have in the community, especially with the homelessness and the people that are on the ground making a difference. And every day we say that be mad and make a difference. So today I'm going to welcome to our studio via a Zoom link Mr. Mark Grant. and he's going to introduce himself much better than I can ever do so. So is Mark with us?
Yes, I am. Hi, good morning, Zeb.
Good morning, Mark. Loud and clear. That's wonderful technology working at its best today, Mark.
Yeah.
And Mark, throughout this year, since the pandemic started, we've all found a new home, haven't we, within our home?
Yes, we have, and I think it probably makes us realise, those of us are lucky to have that, just how important that is for everybody. But I think through the pandemic, we've realised that there's still lots of people who just don't have that security, and we've seen a significant rise of people find themselves homeless through the pandemic.
Of course, we today, Mark, our topic is to discuss the plight of homelessness in our city and how social injustice or social well-being and disruption of the fabric of our community, that is an area that we are all paying a lot of attention to. And then I want the people in the city to know about the people who are on the ground doing a lot of work in this sector. And Action Homeless, an organization that you belong to, have been at the forefront of this, haven't they, Mark?
Yes, thank you, Zeb. We have, yes. We work very closely with other partners as well. Across the city, there's a whole range of organisations working together to tackle homelessness. That includes our council partners and other health partners. So, and particularly over the last few months, that's really been important to work together in partnership. But yes, we've housed a significant number of people over the last few year or so. And at any one time, we have something like 250 people we accommodate in various forms of accommodation. That's from our emergency shelters to longer term housing.
Of course, Mark, this is an area which myself has had a degree of involvement in, and seen it at face value, the plight of somebody who becomes homeless. So, Mark, you have some data that you can share with us, because today my aim is to engage the community with Action Homeless to be aware of where they are, how long they've been around, what they exactly do, and how the wider community can network with Action Homeless along with some of the other groups that we know about in Leicester that are active together.
Well, we've just launched a new website for the Homeless Charter in Leicester. So just over two years ago, we formed a charter, which the idea was to get everybody, not just homeless organisations, but the whole community, business, council, the key leaders, all involved in tackling homelessness. And we've got a homeless charter, and we've just launched a website that's got lots of information for people. So that, I would always say, that's the first place to go. If you just type in homeless charter, that comes up. For Leicester's homeless charter, that comes up very easily. In terms of where we are in the city of Leicester, we have an acute homelessness problem, like many cities. It's particularly challenged in Leicester because we have quite expensive house prices and rents, and it has a knock-on effect for people. The best way to sort of show the sort of impression that we have, since we started the pandemic just over a year ago, City Council, ourselves and other partners have seen something like 750 people who are presented having absolutely nowhere to go. That's not people who are at risk of losing their home or in temporary accommodation. That's people who literally presented and if we hadn't been intervened, would have ended up sleeping on the street. And we've managed to house those people, which has been a fantastic effort, and it's been really hard work. Also, at the start of the pandemic, we were regularly seeing around 25 to 30 people sleeping rough on our streets. And over the last few months, we've worked really hard to try and bring that down. The pandemic's had some impact on that, because that's perhaps helped people make some changes in their lives, because there's not so much going on around in the city, and made living in the city on the street quite difficult for them. And so we've managed to get quite a lot of those very people that are we would call long-term rough sleepers into accommodation. And now we think there's probably no more than 10 people sleeping on the street, which is 10 people too many, I know, But we've reduced that number of actually who are sleeping on the streets to quite a small number. And we're working very closely with those individuals to find out what they need and what we can do to get them into the right accommodation. And that's very much us as a sector, as a homeless sector, that need to work around that. I think one of the things that also we're trying to get people to understand is, for many people walking around our city, they'll see people out begging, maybe looking like they're rough sleeping. Some of those people will sleep on the streets overnight, but many of them won't. Many of them will go back to their own accommodation or hostels or flats. And so the numbers of people you may see in the city centre on a daily basis in the day isn't necessarily representative of the number of people who are actually rough sleeping and have nowhere to go. And that's a more complex issue around what people's needs are and how we support them. And I know many people in the community find it deeply upsetting when they see people who they feel have got nowhere to stay and are begging. But I would caution that actually the numbers we might see, in the day aren't quite the same as the numbers we see normally when we go out. And when we go out to support people, we go out very much in the late evening and early hours. There's an outreach team that's go out most days, including the weekends, around 6 o'clock in the morning to talk to those people that are out sleeping rough and trying to make sure that they've got what they need and persuade them to come into accommodation.
So, Mark, how can we as a city become the lead in the world to show others to follow? How do we find a solution that is unsurpassed anywhere in the world? The Homeless Charter in Leicester was created to bring all the organizations together in the city who are working in this sector. And I often wonder what would happen. How would our government, our local councils handle this situation by themselves if none of the organizations that we are going to highlight this week were in the fray?
I think that it would be very challenging, and they would admit themselves that it would be very challenging. We as an organisation and another organisation in the city do receive funding via the local authority and central government, and we've just opened a project this winter which has had direct money from central government under the Rough Sleeping Initiative, which is and this government has committed to halving rough sleeping by 2022 or the end of 2022 and eradicating it by 2025. That's the first time we've ever had a government that said that it will eradicate rough sleeping. I think that's still a big challenge, and it's still a challenge in our city. It is about working together. There's a lot of different causes for homelessness. It ranges. It can be economic, people losing their jobs, as a result losing their homes, and that can be an issue. It can be family breakup and issues. Domestic violence is a big player as well. We often come across people who perhaps have never really had a settled life or home in the first place. They've been in and out of care and been in and out of different housing situations and homes, and often find themselves without the sort of support that perhaps most of us are used to, our family and friends and colleagues that would support us when we get into problems. And I sort of explain homelessness often like a game of snakes and ladders. For many of us, we have ladders that give us opportunity. We often have good family backgrounds. We have support. We have jobs. We have education. We have opportunity, and that means our ladders are fairly long. So we are able to get onto the foot of the housing ladder. We find ourselves with secure homes, and of course all of us come up against snakes every now and again and problems in our lives, and they become blips. But often we do have those things around us to help us. So even if we lose a job or a loved one, we have other friends and people around us will help us, and at some point we'll get a new job and we'll get back into the normal world. For many people that we work with, particularly at Action Homeless, they've had some very, very difficult lives and experiences. That means their ladders are very short and they don't have some of the background and some of the support that we have. So they lack family and friends, they lack good education, their employment, it's never been particularly good. And also when they hit some of the problems that we all have in life, they find that particularly difficult to cope with and often find themselves very quickly back down the snake and having to start all over again. And for many of them, they find that very difficult to keep picking themselves up. I think we would all recognise that, Zed, that, if we keep getting knocked over and knocked down, there's only so many times you can keep jumping and bouncing up, and especially if you haven't got those things around us. So it's quite complex for people. What we need to start off is finding enough decent, secure housing for people. That's housing that people can call a home, is not something that's temporary, not something that can be taken away quickly, or it's affordable. That means that people can actually have a decent life. They can get work, and they can afford to pay for their homes and their housing, and allows people to have all those things that make a good life, a good rounded life. Social life. Being able to live a normal life, and unfortunately in Leicester we are really struggling in terms of trying to find affordable housing, and that's and it comes for me quite a lot around inequality really within our city. If we walk around and we see the cranes in our city building new housing, invariably that is expensive housing or it is for students. And what we've not been able to do is build decent, affordable housing for a long time in the city in Leicester. And a lot of our social housing, or our council housing, or traditional lower housing has been sold, through various reasons for over the years. So that's a dwindling supply. So that's our biggest challenge, and we've got to try and work together to find ways in which we can create more affordable, decent housing. Working with private landlords, developers. We over the last few months, I've been approached by quite a few student landlords, for instance, who are not letting their property because obviously the students have not been around for a while, or there's not so many overseas students coming in, and trying to talk to them about what we can offer and what how they can perhaps repurpose their accommodation. And we have a lot of empty buildings across the city, and empty properties, and lots of flats above shops that people perhaps are forgotten about, or need investment. We've got lots of old factories and old warehouses that we have around the city, and old office blocks. So we need to think quite inventively and differently about how we perhaps bring some of that property back into use, and change perhaps the way that we see our city. In position, we've perhaps seen our centre of our city as a shopping and restaurants, when actually what we need is a vibrant city where people live and work there, and that will create an energy and regeneration, and that's probably one of the things we need to work together. And that's why we think the Charter is really important, because it's trying to bring the key institutions, which is the council and universities and hospitals, and those together, trying to get some of the businesses together. We're thankful over the last few months we've seen great deal of support from the Business Improvement District, which represents the big businesses in the centre of the city. They've supported us as well, and you may have seen the tap giving points around Leicester, which they support. But we have to work. We have to work together. No one organisation can do this on their own. And as much as anything, it's got to be a change of attitude, I think, from how we see homelessness, and start recognising that everybody who's homeless is our neighbour. That we all have a responsibility to try and to make sure that everybody in our city has somewhere safe to live, and we all need to sort of accept a responsibility around that, I think, and that's that's some of the work we're trying to do with the Charter.
Of course, Mark, you went through a long list there. That was heavy to absorb. So all of you listening in, I need you to send a text in, or even a telephone call in to the studio on 0116 482 2086, or you can send us a WhatsApp on 0774 8855 055. So Mark will be happy to answer some of your questions, and the message is very clear here the importance of working together as a part of the community. And Mark, we have a long list of things to do together. You mentioned earlier on about the empty buildings, and for years we have seen, every one of you will know at least 5 or 10 buildings which are empty in the city. And these are the buildings that Mark's talking about, that they can be used effectively to carry out the work that Action Homeless is doing, and also some of the other players in the homeless sector in the city of Leicester. We have at least 4 or 5 of them come to mind. So today, Mark, what I want to discuss with you is a typical scenario. So at the City Retreat, a project which Teams and City Retreat were very active with, or still are, despite the COVID, on Churchgate, when a person came into the centre, the community centre, we would be signposting him, for example, to another organisation in the city who are specialising with homeless area. So if we signpost a individual to your organisation, run me through the procedure. What do you do with that person?
Well, first of all, we find out what's happening and what the immediate need is for that individual. It can be we have our own duty desk, which is where everybody accesses Action Homeless. So that's a telephone number, but it's a person at the end of the telephone. It's not an automated thing. And the first thing we talk to people is, what's happened to them, and we often find that some of these solutions are for them are actually quite simple. It's just that people perhaps don't know what their rights are. For instance, if a landlord's saying that they need to leave, or whether the local authority, the council, should have a responsibility to house them, or it can often be they just don't know where to go in terms of getting sort of further help as well. For us, we've got a pathway that would bring people in. So initially we would offer them emergency accommodation. In an ideal world, we'd like to offer them a much more secure place, first of all, but in reality is we have to give something and manage something quite quickly. So we've got a number of projects that are emergency accommodation, and then everybody that comes into Action Homeless has a dedicated worker who will start working with them to find out what they need, what some of the issues perhaps are that led them to being homeless. Is there anything that's stopping them or causing them issues that may make it difficult for them to move on and find a home? So perhaps some of that supporting, that could be health, mental health invariably is a very big issue. And, people often who have lived in, being homeless or at threat of homelessness, clearly that's something that really impacts on people's mental health. And we find a large number of people who we work with and come to us for help, and mental health is one of the key issues that we need to support and help them with. And then we'll start to help them try and find somewhere more suitable to live, and try and give them some of that security. So we have some of our own projects where we can offer people permanent housing, and it's really important for us. We very much champion the idea that if you give somebody a home and say you can live here as long as that you need to and want to, that immediate pressure on their lives and their insecurity is a massive change for people. And that means people can then start focusing on the other things that they want to sort out in their lives, and whether it's work or re-establishing contact with family or friends. But if we constantly have people are in temporary accommodation and don't know when they're going to get somewhere safe, they can't move away from homelessness. And that's one of the things we found very much over our experiences, is that we need to give people that level of security around that. So that way we do. Sometimes some of the people that come to us approach us, we're not the right people for lots of different reasons. So we perhaps again would refer them or place them to other organisations. And as you said, there's some great organisations working across the city. We have the Y, which particularly works with younger people. There's a number of organisations that work perhaps with young parents. We've also got One Roof Leicester, which has had a very difficult time through the pandemic, because, as you probably know, they run a night shelter programme, multi-faith places across the city where they house people, particularly those that don't have access to benefits or other income. And because of the pandemic, they've not been able to operate that, but they have worked and adapted very well in terms of trying to find other ways in which they support that sort of people. So, not all of it starts
Mark,
with that
I'm gonna
individual.
have to take a break now. It's we're going to continue after the break with some wonderful ideas.
Thank you, then.
Action here at Ramadan Radio 87.9 FM. And we're here with Mark Grant from Action Homeless, that he's been telling us some wonderful scenarios about Action Homeless, what they do in the city, and how important it is for organizations like Action Homeless and some of the other organizations he mentioned. Also, the Night Shelter by One Roof, a lady that we know very well who runs that, Salma Rawat. Good morning to you if you're listening in. And if you want to text us or ask a question to Mark, then please do so on 0774 8855 055 on Ramadan Radio. Or some of you like to call us Radio Ramadan. So we'd like to hear from you and discuss with you many of the issues that are in our city concerning the homeless. And you can even call us in on 011 648 22086. Welcome back, Mark, and we shall continue with the last session of this program before we go to work, Mark, and go and earn some money.
Yes.
So, Mark, I want to talk to you today about the impact in monetary terms for one person who is homeless. What is the impact to our community, our country, our society, even our council?
Yeah, there's been quite a lot of work been done over the years on this one, Ed, around what it costs. It's estimated it costs around £40,000 a year to in costs for a person who sleeps on the street, and that's sort of ranging from the added cost of that person probably going to hospital more, issues with the police, sort of a range of issues that come off services to help them, outreach services. So £40,000 a year is quite high water when you think what you're doing is actually not solving a problem for anybody. And that's, you know, whatever the moral issues for me around the rights of people to have somewhere safe to live, that they're very clearly economic for those of us who are very business minded. That makes no sense at all, does it? When, you know, we could very clearly, an Action Homeless can provide a home for people for a much smaller amount of that. And when we mean provide a home, that means the support and help that people need to keep that home and to manage. So there's a very clear economic driver around how we should try to reduce people living on the street.
Of course, this is very important for everyone to realize that this problem is across the board, across the city. And Mark, it would be also interesting to know exactly from our community. We have a very diverse community in the city of Leicester. We need to study as to from which particular sector of our diversity are there homeless people, so we can home in on that and focus to ask reasons. Well, why is in diversity 1 more people are homeless than diversity 20? What are they doing right? And how we can address this issue?
Yeah, yes, I would be remiss not to say that, you know, it affects some communities more than others, and that's around poverty. I think we predominantly see people who sleep rough tend to be older white men. They tend to come from our traditional housing estates and housing, and often have lost their home because of that spiral, often of debt and a marital breakup and losing homes and things like that. That's probably the traditional. But actually, our homeless population reflects our wider community, and we do see people from across the communities of Leicester and the ethnic communities of Leicester. In terms of homelessness, one of the things that is disproportionate is unfortunately refugees and asylum seekers who often find themselves without any place to go. And Leicester's an incredibly welcoming city, always has been for many generations in terms of how it welcomes new people. But obviously, new people come without some of those advantages that many of us who are established in the city have, and they don't have housing or family or friends or opportunities to work, and so that's another group that is often find themselves in difficulty within the city. And I know from your experience that the is very much said, and some of your colleagues, is that those people often find themselves in very destitute and very desperate situations.
So all of you listening in right now, it's good for you all to know poverty is the leader. From poverty, the homelessness will stem. And one of my concerns, Mark, is that people are often going to become habitually leading to addictive to substances when they are depressed, when their social well-being, their health, their wellness is affected. And like you mentioned earlier on, even joblessness or a marital breakdown at home. So it would be very interesting, Mark, for us to share the stats and to talk about them more in the wider community so we can create preventive measures. And these are issues that have to be shared with all the organizations, all the faith centers. You will see that in the inner city we have the many diversities here, and to do some courses, some seminars, some awareness days to these people that, look, how can do we have the correct formula that we can share with other communities? How can we reach out to the other communities to say, look, we don't have this issue in our community because of this reason. We have an extended family culture, and we have a sofa and 5-6 choices in the city. Many reasons like that we have to reach out.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I think we've all become increasingly aware of over the last few months is how fragile our health is, and our physical and our mental health. And I think we've all recognised that the impact of the COVID pandemic has not just been around the virus itself; it's just the impact that it's had on many of us in terms of our mental health. And I think we've all probably had difficult times over the last few months in terms of not being able to connect perhaps with family and friends and do some of the things that we take for granted. And one of the key things that I would say is that mental health is probably one of the biggest drivers for homelessness. Mental health causes lots of other issues that then come along. If our mental health isn't working, what we tend to do is not make good decisions, and we make mistakes and do things that perhaps in normal times we wouldn't make, and that's one of the key things I think we have to acknowledge. And mental health is exacerbated and can be caused by poverty, but it isn't exclusive to poverty, and we've got to recognise that actually that can hit anybody in any of our communities at any time. And one of the things that's been really useful is that conversation and dialogue around mental health has really increased over the last year or so, and I think that's really important. And I think you're right that about our communities and how we see it is looking outside of perhaps our front door or where we are, and perhaps peering a little deeper into what's going on in our local community. Some of the things that aren't always that visible, and that's often means talking to each other, being open and sharing a little bit, and that way we'll be able to find and help people who are in trouble a little bit more, and perhaps and I think that's one of the again the positives around the COVID pandemic, if it's a positive, is that lots of our neighbourhoods have come together and looked about who needs help, who needed help to deliver food, for instance, or medication, and hopefully we can build on that and create that level of neighbourliness in a city that actually we're quite famed for, I think, but we can still build on it. We can still be better at.
So here, Mark, at the Radio Ramadan, we have 30 days in 1 year and 12 months in the year, right? And we are always championing the causes in the city. Last year, we took the project on from the Leicester Children's Hospital for the new children's ward there this year. God willing, we shall continue with that initiative and bring completion to that project, so we can all in the community from across the different diversities take ownership of that particular project and say that that is my project. So I tell all the people, just to remind you, that every time you take ownership of a project, even if you donate £1 to make that project happen, you are a partner in that project. Whether you donate £1 or you donate 10,000 or 25,000, you all work together as a team from all the different diversities. And this is what pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that when we all work together as a team. Now, with Action Homeless, I'm proposing to all of you listening in right now that we engage with all these wonderful organizations in the city. So across diversities, when one diversity will engage with another one, you'll create a better city. And Mark, I for one, here at the radio, all of our team, we want to take the lead all the time and pursue for all diversities to work together in the city. So if you ask anybody on the street, Mark, how many diversities are there in Leicester? How many there are, do you think, Mark?
I wouldn't have a clue, to be honest, because I think if you ask, if we counted today, by tomorrow it'd be different. That's one of the great joys of Leicester is its ever-changing landscape and diversity. So I would imagine we're in hundreds of different people with different backgrounds from different parts of the world and different beliefs and cultures. And you know, we are a city that is famed, and I think for accepting and embracing each other around diversity. And as you say, but it is about all of us having that ownership, isn't it, for
Exactly.
our collective problems, really.
Yeah, and it's often I always urge people to say that, well, if you have a councillor or you have an MP, always ensure that you have one person who's acting for all diversities and not a specific diversity, which may be his own diversity and so on. So we have ever-changing communities, like Mark has said. So maybe 20 diversities are just locally in your area, but the figure, one day we're going to have to sit down and discuss this before the end of the radio, exactly how many there is in Leicester today. At the University of Leicester, they have done many investigations on this, and they have some good data on that, which I'm going to share with them when we speak with them.
Yeah, I think the most striking thing for me is that somebody who's grown up in Leicester, and it is that just how much our city evolves, and you know, we've just recently done the census, which is a really interesting piece of work. And if we go back over time and just see how our city has evolved and diverse, and how our housing has evolved and diverse in terms of who lives there and issues, that's really interesting. But actually, ultimately, we have more in common than the difference. And some of the issues that we've been tackling and talking about have been with us for a very, very long time. Homelessness is not a new phenomenon, and you know, we've had people sleeping on our streets for centuries, and you know, we would have helped by now that a country with the resources, and I think not just the economic resources, but the people resources, that you know, and Leicester's one of those rich cities, both, you know, I would say financially, but in terms of its capital, the people live there, that we are still talking about tackling a problem around homelessness, and surely we must be able and near to be able to solve that for people. That you know, that when something unfortunate or difficult happens to somebody, the consequences is they don't lose their home, because we know once people lose their home, that the spiral, or the snake, as I describe it, is very long and very slippery, and things get worse. And you know, that the least we can do is when we get, you know, that when people have difficult times in their lives, they don't lose their home, because that just exasperates and makes the situation much, much worse for them.
So, Mark, one of the issues you and I have discussed before is the importance of wellness and health. So, we discussed a project I know some time ago that if we had a building where we had some very good facilities to incorporate a rooftop garden and to include a wellness center, and then also some offices that are also taking care of the people living in the building in terms of offering them support to do with their mental health or to even look for their situation with a job. Because Mark, when joblessness will create hopelessness, which will then lead to uselessness, and then all the other things that come down the line of depression, mental health, and how today we are, whether we like it or not, we are dependent on a monetary system of living.
I think that is really important. You're right in employment, but I often speak to some of our people who live with us, and one of the things that they'll say is very much that work isn't just about the monetary. It is about self-esteem. It's about purpose. It's about structure. It's around sociability and having people around you and friendship of colleagues. It provides so much other than just the wage at the end of the week or the end of the month. And it's an incredibly important thing, and we try and work as best we can with people to get them back into employment. And for some of them who have never held down a steady job or find it very difficult to access employment. I think we all recognise that's a really important part of our work, and acknowledging that perhaps for people who are homeless or have been homeless, actually work is something they want, but often find it quite difficult to perhaps get back into that or sustain it for a while. And what we need is employers that perhaps recognise that. But Action Homeless itself has its own social enterprise. It's a not-for-profit cleaning and maintenance business where we employ some of our former homeless residents and give them a role, and very much they said the thing that they say back to us is that job is as important as giving them somewhere safe to live, and that's a really important piece of our work. But obviously we're one organisation, a relatively small organisation compared with some other employers across Leicester, and definitely giving people work often gives people hope as well.
Now that indeed is a very creative way of thinking, where again you are down the road that you and I are talking the same language of taking a preventive measure there by being creative and out of the box thinking. So to spell it out to everybody listening in is, if Action Homeless have got a facility there of a cleaning company, for example, which is not for profit, but is purely there to put one homeless person in work so that he can sustain himself. And this is very important. And this is where I'm talking about today. Mark, now I want to quickly go through some ideas with you of building strategic partnerships with the retail sector, with the manufacturing sector. So if we have, for example, in Leicester, 100 organizations, now those 100 organizations, they got to be linked, twinned, partnered with 100 companies or 100 retail shops. So what I'm asking all the business community, if you're listening in right now, you need to put on your system at least 5 organizations that you will support. If you support 5 organizations, for example, if you set aside a budget of £5,000 per annum and you give each one of these organizations £1,000 each, you will see a massive difference in your community. And if everybody is mentored and everybody comes forward with this ATC, adapt to change mentality, you will see the benefits to the community, you will see your diversity, you will see so much good coming out of it, that I'm just using 5,000 as an example. It can be 10, it can be 100, or it can even be 1,000, and you spread it across 5 organizations that you will partner with. Mark, how's that for starters?
That would be a great start, Ed, and fantastic. I think the most as important, though, is having a dialogue with those organisations not just a monetary exchange, but organisation teaming up and buddying up with others around talking about what are the problems. And one of the reasons I want and love coming onto shows like yours is to raise awareness as much as what, you know, the important thing that we do is it's not just the services we offer, but it's the raising those issues, challenging people's perceptions sometimes, you know, being advocates for our clients and others. But it's about, you know, that plea, you know, the plea is not just to give the money, it is to have that dialogue and that relationship.
Brilliant. Now, Mark, this is an idea which I have been championing myself with the sports in our city to get companies affiliated with different sporting organizations, grassroots sports, whereby the companies will start investing in their grassroots. And here's where it gets exciting, Mark, is, as you said, it's not only the monetary part that makes a difference. If, for example, you get your family involved and take a trip on a Saturday or a Sunday, whenever you can, together as a family with your 5-year-old child, they will also benefit to see, well, my father, my mother, they are part of this organization, and they start taking ownership. Only when you touch and feel, you will take ownership, and you will see the benefit of that and how much positive energy that will be instilled in you. And that's the level we want to take this at, Mark. And to build those strategic partnership with families, not only with one individual, say, oh, I've done my bit, I've paid him £1,000, I've done and dusted with that, but no. Mark has quite rightly
one
said.
One of the things we've had is supporters over the years and schools, and we've got one school in the centre of the city who they're regularly, their year sixes towards the end of their primary school, all do a sponsor sleep out. And not only do they raise a phenomenal amount of money, actually, for given how many people are involved, but most importantly, that raises an understanding and awareness. And actually what we've done over the years is invited some of our homeless clients along to speak to those pupils, those young people, and talk about their own experiences. And clearly that's something that those young people experience at a very formative age that really stays with them, and hopefully as they grow and grow up and develop into adults, they'll have an understanding and awareness around some of the issues and some of the challenges that being homeless is, and hopefully none of them will experience it, but perhaps will know where to turn to or to show others to where to turn to, but perhaps have a much better empathy around the issues, really. So that's a really different and engaging way that we can get our young people especially engaged in thinking about an issue and a problem.
Right, guys, today sadly we are coming to the end of the program. Today we've learned a lot from Mark from Action Homeless. We've discussed about value to the community. We've also discussed about the impact to our community when one person is homeless. We've discussed some long-term solutions, and we've also discussed some strategic partnerships that we can build with you out there in the community, whether you're a business, you're an individual, or you are a retail shop. And the aim of this after Radio Ramadan should be that we should build on those partnerships, and we should work together with each other and build a stronger, better community to make Leicester the lead in this sector for other cities to follow from our example. Mark, and I'd like to thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Much appreciated for you to give us time and to engage with the city of Leicester. And no doubt people now will know who is Mark Grant. You can look him up and you'll be happy.
Thank you. And all the best to your listeners over the next few weeks of Ramadan as well.
Thank you very much for all of you listening in. We look forward to your messages, and you can text them in afterwards when you listen in. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much.
Thank you.